The following episode of the Maui Chamber of Commerce's Business Matters radio show was originally broadcast on January 25th, 2022.
Aloha and welcome, Maui, to the Maui Chamber of Commerce's Business Matters radio show, sponsored by Mokulele Airlines. I'm your host, Pamela Timpot, president of the Maui Chamber of Commerce, and today we're going to discuss worker shortages and the impact of those shortages on flights with Chief of Staff of Mokulele Airlines. We're going to speak about home prices and the housing market, as well as affordable housing and rentals that are so important to us all, with the Government Affairs Director of the Realtors Association of Maui. And we're going to speak with the District Manager of Matson regarding staffing challenges and shipping delays nationwide and how they're affecting the shipping industry. Oh, okay, I see that we're connecting with Keith Sisson. While Keith connects in, Keith is the Chief of Staff of Mokulele Airlines, the co-founder of Southern Airlines in 2013. Keith was part of the team that led the acquisition effort of Mokulele in 2019. And Keith oversaw the renovation and modernization efforts of the Kahului Commuter Terminal, which, if you haven't seen, is absolutely beautiful and is now the busiest commuter terminal in the United States. Mokulele now offers over 120 flights in Hawaii, and since becoming the only airlines for the islands of Molokai and Lanai, has made a commitment to never having a sold-out flight day. Keith lives in Kona with his 3-year-old son, Jack, and his wife, Ashley, who is a local artist. Good morning, Keith. Are you on the air?
Yes, good morning.
Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Everything is great in Kona today.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. Did you happen to feel the earthquake we had last night?
I did not.
Okay, it was off of Kaho'olawe. So it was, I think it might have been 4.5. It was over 4, and we felt it on Maui anyway. It was kind of interesting. I was thinking of you because often when we feel it on Maui, it's coming from Big Island.
No, I can say that I was not woken up, but, my wife is also very heavy-footed, so it would not be uncommon for me to have rattling in the house at night.
I hear that. That happens in our house, too. Even the dogs can shake some things up a bit. Oh, well, I'm so glad to have you on again. And, Mokulele Airlines has been doing such an amazing job serving our state. And I know that, across the nation, but certainly here in Hawaii, we are having challenges with worker shortages. And so I wondered how the worker shortages were affecting Mokulele Airlines.
We're managing. I can say that. Certainly when you look at what's happening, not just with worker shortages across the country, but specifically worker shortages within the airline industry, this holiday season was a complete disaster for aviation, the major carriers, all of the big operators. I think everybody saw the news where all of the majors were canceling flights due to employee shortages. And it's real. It's something that we have to manage on a day-to-day basis. But so far, we are managing, and we've been very fortunate that we have not had to have a cancellation anywhere in our system. We're over 230 flights a day system-wide from Boston to Honolulu. And
wow.
we have not had to cancel any flights due to employee shortages, but we have been forced to move people around. It's a shell game at some point, at some times, because when you have a situation where it's hard to find labor, combined with a situation where you have people that are going through COVID protocols, we are having to take people from one footprint and parachute them into another one and work them on TDY operations for 4 or 5 days until we get a group of employees back that may have had a COVID related outing. That combined with the fact that nobody is fully staffed right now anywhere, so it's it's kind of a perfect storm, but I don't know of any airline that's been able to operate throughout the holiday season as well as we have. We've been very fortunate in that all of the flights that were scheduled took off, and all of the airports that were scheduled to have operations had operations.
I'm blown away to hear that you haven't had to cancel a single flight. I mean, I agree with you. I don't know of anybody who has survived through the holidays with that record. And that is amazing. What a tribute to you and the Mokulele Airlines team for doing that, because every business I talk to these days is struggling desperately with scheduling. And,
it's very challenging.
On-time flights is the ultimate schedule, right?
No, that's right, and it's very challenging, and we've been very fortunate. We caught an Omicron wave within our pilot corps very early on, and by the time the rest of the airline industry started to have those problems, we were starting to get people back to work. So we were able to start the cycle flowing of people coming back to work after being out with a COVID illness or a COVID protocol. Because I say COVID protocol because a lot of people weren't ill. It was just the protocol is you don't go to work, in those circumstances. But we were able to, start a cycle very early on where we were getting more people coming back than we were losing. So we were very fortunate on timing.
Yeah, that really is amazing. You mentioned something else, and I wanted to get your opinion on this because you mentioned again, in addition to what's happening with the wave of worker shortages because of the COVID protocols and just people catching Omicron much more easily than we saw with the Delta variant, but thankfully it's not as strong. But I'm wondering how you feel about the discussions that are going on right now with Governor Ige. There's discussion about, again, putting the booster as a requirement for travel, and that you have to be up to date on your vaccinations, which for many would include ensuring that they've gotten the booster prior to travel. Can you share any thoughts on that?
Well, certainly we have expected that something like this may be coming not just from the state level, but also from the federal level as to what it means to be fully vaccinated. So I think that whatever the state and, for that matter, at the federal level is decided, I think it's very important to have a runway that leads up to that, where you can't just on a Tuesday say, tomorrow you have to be fully vaccinated. You have to have your booster shot within 14 days, whatever the ruling may be. I think it would be fair if we were going to go down that path to set a date in the future, 30 days out, 45 days out, something that will allow for a longer runway so that people that do have travel plans booked that right now think that they are fully vaccinated, if we do have a situation where the booster shot is necessary to reach that threshold of being fully vaccinated, we just have to make sure that we give people the opportunity to get that before their trip is to take place. So if this is something that does happen, I desperately want to see a long runway to give people an opportunity to get that third shot so that their travel plans are not disrupted. Certainly very important for the passenger, but also very important for the airlines that fly in and out of Hawaii. We don't want to see a situation where enplanements lag and revenue for the airlines lags because of this, because we saw what happens when you limit air travel and you limit the number of passengers that can enter the state due to a regulation. It's bad for all of the employees of the airline. It's bad for the people of Hawaii that rely on those airlines to move them around island to island. So certainly, if this is something that is under consideration, my suggestion would be make the call, but then give notice so that everybody who falls into that falls into that situation of needing a third shot will have plenty of time to get that third shot and have the necessary waiting period after it so that travel is not interrupted.
I hear you, and I really appreciate your sentiments on that. We keep hearing and have seen in the past where the runway might be 2 weeks, and it just sends everything in chaos. It sends industry in chaos. It sends travelers in chaos.
I think the general public and the airlines themselves can deal with the ruling as long as they have adequate time to deal with the ruling.
Yeah, and that's I think that's the big request. Fair. You're right. Is give us time to ramp up and do it, but understanding that tough calls have to be made at times, but give industry and our guests time to prepare. I totally hear that. I think that's a good recommendation. Given, all of these flights that you're scheduling, and you mentioned you've got a lot more flights than I mentioned in the introduction, so I wanted to have you give me an update on your flights.
Well, certainly from a standpoint of system-wide, we start our morning in Nantucket, and then we end our day in Honolulu. So we're across 6 time zones. And about half of our flying is in the state of Hawaii. About half of the flying is on the mainland continent. So with all of that combined, a little over around 230 daily flights is what we're looking at. About half of those here in Hawaii, and and I've heard you talk about this in the introduction. Never a sold out day. We're constantly adding flights. I think we added close to 80 round-trip flights in the 2 weeks that were right around the Christmas travel peak season, just to make sure that, in Hawaii alone, just to make sure that everybody that needed to get to Molokai or Lanai had that opportunity. And we always look at that. Every morning we look at, where do we need to add extra flights? And I just added an extra flight for, of all things, somewhere way out in June yesterday, because for whatever reason that day was a very popular day. So we're going to be monitoring that and making sure that people have an opportunity to travel. Yeah.
I'm really just amazed at what this airline has been able to accomplish, not only with not having sold out days, but adding flights, constantly keeping up with new markets. And what do you attribute that? Again, it's as you pointed out earlier, it's very unique given what others have been experiencing. What do you attribute that to?
Well, we have a responsibility. We recognize that. People depend upon us. This is a situation unlike anything else in the country, maybe even the world, where you have people that are separated by bodies of water and choose to live on one island, choose to work on another. There are essential medical appointments that have to be made. We have a responsibility, and we take it very seriously, and we make sure that we don't disappoint anyone. So we try our best to make sure that we always have a flight available whenever people need it, and make sure we always have a few extra seats available in case somebody has that last-minute travel need. We are the land bridge of Hawaii, and we take that very seriously, and our team members have adopted that responsibility, and I'm very proud of what we've been able to do, and we have more improvements in store.
Well, that is so amazing, and you really should be very proud. It sounds like a phenomenal model, and we're always interested in learning about different industry models and how the teams are coming together around their core vision and purpose to carry it through. And you folks are clearly doing an awesome job at that. What you mentioned, you've got new things in the works, but what are you forecasting for 2022? And we keep hearing that Omicron is not the last variant that we're going to have. We're going to be living with this for a long time. What is Mokulele Airlines looking at moving forward for this year and maybe in the year after?
Well, we have a couple of things going on. One of them, we can't predict, and no airline can predict what's going to be going on with the virus, and no business can. So we have to have some degree of schedule as normal. Do what needs to be done in the silo of this is what we would do if the virus were not part of our lives. And then also in the forefront, what do we have to do today on the realities of the viruses in our life? So we're looking at growth opportunities. One of the things that I'm very excited about, and I spoke with you about last time we were on the phone, was bringing larger aircraft here. We have two 30-seater aircraft that are coming to Hawaii. They have been a little bit delayed, and a lot of that is COVID related. But that is moving now. The crew for those aircraft have already been to ground school, and one of the aircraft goes into the paint shop next week. So we really think that these planes are going to be flying early spring this year with daily service from Honolulu to Molokai and Lanai, and also help us out with our charters of large groups that come in. For example, when a high school athletic team on Molokai needs to go off island, that's a perfect aircraft to use for something like that. When you have a large convention that flies into Honolulu that needs to get to the Four Seasons on Lanai, having a larger aircraft is a good option for people like that. So we're excited about bringing that here. We're also looking at some alternatives to the actual aircraft that we use to move people around, and we'll be making some announcements here pretty soon about possibly using a seaplane type operation and going from port to port. So this is something that we haven't fully vetted out yet, but we're always looking for different growth opportunities, and that may be one that we're looking at specifically from the standpoint of we know how important sustainability is to the people in the state of Hawaii. We are a leader in the aviation field when it comes to sustainability. We will be the first airline to fly hybrid electric aircraft on scheduled service, and we're looking at other electrification type options that we can deploy throughout the state of Hawaii. That is not only going to help us with the need of moving passengers today, but the way of doing it responsibly for the future.
I am so excited. Yes, we are big sustainability folks here, and I had the pleasure of sitting for 3 years on the Hawaii Sustainability Task Force, which was the Hawaii 2050 Sustainability Task Force, and we're hoping that those plans, we always say those plans won't sit on the shelf, but sometimes they do, and thankfully they're getting updated annually. But to hear that you're moving into hybrid electric aircraft, tell me a little bit about what that means in sustainability.
Well, certainly, anytime that you can remove the purchase of jet fuel from being a cost of operation for an airline, that definitely has a direct correlation to the cost of operation, which in turn has a direct result when it comes to the fare that we charge to the customer. So as electric aviation, starting with hybrid electric and then possibly going all electric, possibly going hydrogen, as these technologies come into existence, it's going to lower the cost of maintenance, going to lower the cost of the amount of jet fuel that's needed on routes. The end result is going to be a lower ticket price to the passenger, and that's what I'm the most excited about. I mean, certainly everybody can be excited about the environmental impacts that come with electrification, but when you look at it from how does it affect the pocketbook of the average traveler, this is going to be transformative for the way that people seek transportation throughout the state of Hawaii, and it's going to be transformative from the pocketbook.
Phenomenal. I had no idea that was coming up, and really exciting news. Is there a prediction of time frame on that?
We are hoping for early 2025 for the first passenger flights to take off. They've already completed some successful testing. In fact, one of the first test flights was the Kaho out, and that was without passengers, but was on a hybrid electric aircraft. And that took place just under a year ago. So we are looking at we're looking at 2025 for all of the approvals from both regulatory and insurance sides, and the technology is just developing so fast. every day. So it's not science fiction. This is going to happen. Every day there's advancements in the technology for hybrid electric and electrification of aviation. It's going to start with smaller aircraft, of course, so that puts us at the forefront of the aviation community. All of the major airlines will be watching what happens with airlines like Mokulele that fly smaller aircraft, because that's where the technology is going to begin. And eventually in our lifetime, there'll be large aircraft flying across oceans that will be electrically powered. But all of that's going to start with the smaller 9-seat aircraft, and the technology will build from there. So we have a very unique opportunity to be, very cutting edge and lead the world with this technology, and all of the major airlines will follow as that technology is advanced.
How thrilling is that? Well, I'm so glad that you mentioned that this morning. So exciting to hear your plans on that, and that's moving forward. We want to send our greatest congratulations and hopes that you get the regulatory things ironed out. Sometimes we know those can cause delays, but to be on the forefront of this new technology launch is thrilling, and for the people of Hawaii to get to see it and be on the forefront with you as well is very exciting. So thank you so much, Keith, for sharing. It's always great to have you on the show. We appreciate you very much and appreciate you being one of our sponsors on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, and look forward to the next time.
We look forward to it again. We'll get it scheduled soon.
Aloha.
Aloha. Well, folks, just want to tune in for a quick commercial from our sponsor, Mokulele Airlines.
Mokulele Airlines operates the largest commuter airline hub in the country, right here in Kahului. Fly Mokulele from Kahului to Molokai, Lanai, Hana, Waimea, Kona, and now Hilo. Mokulele also operates the only flights between Kapalua and Honolulu. There is never a middle seat on Mokulele, and every seat has a window and aisle. Visit mokuleleairlines.com and take your next flight from the newly renovated Mokulele Terminal.
And we're back. I am also excited this morning that we're going to talk to Jason Economou, who is the Government Affairs Director for the Real Estate Association of Maui, known as RAM. Jason became an attorney in 2012 after receiving a BA from the Citadel and a JD from Charleston School of Law. Rather than staying in the practice of law, Jason pursued his dream of becoming a Peace Corps volunteer and relocated to Uganda for nearly 4 years. During that time, he taught in rural villages, worked with local organizations to build schools and community centers, hosted a weekly radio program, and established local language literacy initiatives with USAID and the U.S. Department of State. Jason returned to the United States in 2016, at which time he re-entered the practice of law and joined the law firm of Merchant and Horowitz and Tilley in Wailuku. During his tenure with them, Jason specialized in landlord-tenant law, civil litigation, and real estate transactions. He left the practice of law in 2018 to take up his current position with the Realtors Association of Maui. Good morning, Jason, and thank you for joining us again today.
Good morning, Pam. Thanks for having me, and thanks for reading the long bio. I've trimmed it down. I must have sent you guys the old one when I was still trying to get a job.
This is an amazing experience that people should understand about you, because you have a dynamic background of service. And I really appreciate, as I've gotten to know you, the work that you do in community building. And I think it's important for people to know a little bit more about, your long-standing history of great service.
Thank you. Yeah, I do come at it from a different angle. A lot of times people assume that I'm just some, high-priced fancy attorney that, I don't even know what background people assume for me. Oftentimes, I'm certain that they assume that I'm like a hardcore conservative that's straight out of, some Republican think tank, but it's actually the complete opposite. I'm just a big hippie that was in the Peace Corps, and this is an opportunity to help with just good housing policy to help more people. So yeah, I really enjoy my job, and I think my background works well for it.
I absolutely agree. And, we've been getting to work together on a number of issues And one of the key things that we're always concerned about is, what's happening on housing and how do we get to affordable housing. So can you give me an update today on what's going on with the median home price on Maui? And, a lot of people are still wondering. I know very early on, a lot of people thought it was a lot of mainland buyers, and the mix was not quite what we thought. We found that a lot of it was local buyers in the beginning. How is that mixed now? Who's buying a lot of our property these days? And where are we at with the median home price?
Yeah, so the median home price is way up there. It's $1,075,000 is what the median home price was for December 2021. And that was for single-family residents. And then for condos, the median price was at $700,000 for December. We haven't gotten the January statistics yet because we're still working our way through January. That breakdown of who's buying isn't necessarily the most interesting. So the who's buying, I'll answer that question. It's about 37% mainland and offshore purchasers, overseas purchasers, but the majority is still local buyers. Now, to put that in perspective, you guys can Google who's buying Maui homes, and you'll find an article from the past 5 years where it says about 30% of the homes have been purchased by mainland or international purchasers. So there has been an uptick percentage-wise as far as mainland purchasers, but it's not as extreme as a lot of people are assuming. A lot of people think, more than half the homes sold last year were to mainland purchasers, and that's not really accurate. It's still a majority of local residents, and this is based off of DBET data that was analyzed. Now, what's really interesting, though, is that the number of homes being sold is way up for those mainland purchasers. So 30% of sales last year probably represented about 400-something homes, whereas this year 30% of total sales is like 900 homes that are being purchased by these mainland purchasers. Ultimately, this is something that you and our organization have been warning the council about and warning really all of Maui County about for years, which is the median home sale is going to go up to over $1 million because you guys aren't building inventory.
Yeah.
And you had initially said that was going to happen in 2025, and it happened way sooner than we expected. And honestly, it's sort of shocking that we didn't expect it because, we have been in such a deficit of building new units for our residents, and we've had policies that do not assist in protecting the affordability for our residents. So, yeah, this is one of those unfortunate things that we saw coming from a while away, and it's not necessarily because we have a huge influx of mainland purchasers, which there has been, but it's really an inventory issue. Inventory and just the economy overall hasn't been as kind to our residents as we would hope.
You're very correct. And, for our listening audience, the numbers that Jason's sharing is we predicted at the Chamber in a conference, an affordable housing and rentals conference held in October 2019. It was a very conservative projection. We only used a 4% annual increase, which people in the audience balked at. And the reason was because we knew the number would scare people, and we didn't want to overinflate the number. So we were very conservative and very clear that our number was very conservative. And we predicted that by 2024, we would be at over $1 million. And the trajectory showed that by 2042, we would be over $2 million, median home price. And the point was that is so far out of the range of affordability for local people. And the whole point of the conference was to educate people on these very scary numbers, and again, highly conservative, on how important building affordable housing and rentals is to keep local families here on island, to help bring their children back home. And we are still lagging behind in what's going on with moving forward with affordable housing and rentals.
Yeah.
And we deeply appreciate the partnership with RAM and you, Jason, and your continued education, because we're in a very scary time, and now we're in a scarier time because we always explain to the council and government, not just the county council, and we're not alone, this is a state issue, this is a county issue, but the longer we wait to build, prices go up, and we've seen of late building prices with during COVID times, building materials prices have been skyrocketing, okay, and prices will always go up, but now we're in a very unique time where it costs more today than even a year ago, significantly more today than a year ago, to build houses. And again, this conference was held back in 2019 when we were saying, we know we've got huge shortages, and the pace of which housing is being built is just not keeping up with the demand that hasn't been kept up with for, quite frankly, a decade. So now it's snowballing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're hitting the nail right on the head. And if you look at RAM's data, so anybody can go to ramaui.com, and there's a consumer section that has our market statistics, and we've got the market stats that go back years. I think, as far back as 1998, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. But what you end up seeing is we've got these charts that show that as inventory is going down over the past decade, the prices are consistently rising. There are a lot of factors that go into housing prices, but the most simple idea is that supply and demand curve. And that's a huge part of what's at play here. And yeah, we really need some major changes to help with that supply. And that'll help ease the demand. And then there are policy changes that need to be made to help protect affordability and maybe create a sort of specialized markets in land trust housing. But the overarching problem is that we just haven't kept up with the demand. Even if we build 5,000 units tomorrow, and a week from now we've got 5,000 more units in inventory, we're still about 15,000 units behind. So it's a big problem that's going to need to be addressed for years to come.
It does, and we appreciate that you are on the forefront. We've had meetings this past week with industry groups. Actually, it was last week, but we had meetings with industry groups who all said that housing was one of their top priorities. We had meetings with neighbor island chambers across the state who all said housing is one of their top priorities, and yet we really need to work with government to make affordable housing and rentals one of the top priorities, not just in talks and discussion, but in moving forward with getting units built. And I know RAM is on the forefront of this area as well. What do you see as key areas that you mentioned a few now? What do you see as the key initiative that RAM wants to pursue in the coming year to try and help move things forward?
At the state level, we are working with the Hawaii Association of Realtors on a couple of key pieces of legislation. We have a piece of legislation that we've been championing for a couple of years now, which would modify the Land Use Commission approvals for parcels of land, hopefully to get some small-scale development to ease through the Land Use Commission system a little bit easier. But, some of our state reps are even talking about getting rid of the Land Use Commission at this point because it really has become an impediment to a lot of development because you have a lot of people who are in the NIMBY camp, the not in my backyard camp. And to address those NIMBY folks, we also are pushing what we're calling the NIMBY bill or the YIMBY bill, the yes in my backyard bill, which would really require the counties just to provide a report to the state every year saying, here are the 7 areas that we know if we change our processes, it'll create more housing opportunities for residents. What are the counties doing in these various areas? So at the state level, we're pushing for change that way. At the county level, we've been big supporters of the comprehensive affordable housing plan, even though it has some flaws in it. We still support the concept and moving that forward. And I encourage everybody to check out that Maui County Comprehensive Affordable Housing Plan, as well as the write-up that UHERO did on it, with some critiques, because those UHERO critiques, I feel like that's part 2 of the plan if you really look at it. But one of the things that both of those plans agree on, and every single other housing plan that Maui County has done before that all agrees on, is that we need to streamline the development process. One of the major ways we can do that is by right development standards for affordable housing projects. It is too easy for neighbors to oppose development of much-needed housing because they complain about traffic congestion or public school crowding or property values or view lines or just neighborhood aesthetics. And I get it. We don't want Maui to be ugly, but I think it's more important that we house people and we provide housing opportunities for our hardworking residents than to just say, oh, well, we don't have enough capacity on the roads for everybody. And that goes to the other thing that RAM has advocated for, which is more county involvement in infrastructure that serves housing. You know, nobody wants to build the infrastructure to places where there are no housing. But nobody's going to build housing if there's no infrastructure to serve it. It's a really rough cycle that we're in here, and something needs to change. And I think the county, you know, is honestly on the right track. There's a real legitimate desire to change. They're having some really difficult discussions in the Affordable Housing Committee as of late, as far as trying to figure out how to make that change feasible. But yeah, we're behind. We're as you said, we're at least a decade behind.
Yeah. And I think those are all great suggestions, and I appreciate you mentioning, again, to look at the UHERO review of the Comprehensive Housing Plan. It's about us constantly revisiting the plans and keeping up with where the market's changing, what's happening, and understanding conditions that are impacting us and looking at moving forward. And there have been, for a very long time, decades of discussion about infrastructure investment.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, hopefully with some of the federal funding, we can look at ways to use some of that federal funding to create that infrastructure. But in addition to housing, which is a huge issue for us, and I know we've just got a couple of minutes left, Jason, I wanted to have you also share on, you know, what's going on with the county and their review and looking to overturn the Minatoya decision.
Yeah, so this has been an ongoing saga as well that RAM has been dealing with a decade, and basically what it comes down to is the county is hearing this outcry as far as tourism, so their thought is that they could, you know, take away people's property rights, and maybe that'll have an impact on tourism. For those of you that aren't familiar, there are about 7,000 condo units that were entitled prior to 1989. So these are existing units. We're not talking about any more new units. And this limited universe of units can do vacation rentals by right. It's in the county code. It's in legislation that dates back to 1989. This is just one of their uses that they have the right to use. It's explicitly stated under permitted uses, and the council thinks that if they strip these property owners of this property right, then maybe it'll reduce the number of tourists. And what RAM has to say about that is you know, we don't see how that's likely. We understand that argument, but ultimately, you know, our top concerns are you're taking away people's property rights. This is going to trigger legal challenges, but also it has a whole bunch of other repercussions. You know, it would result in about $30 million of lost tax revenue annually that really should be put towards affordable housing. So kind of the way we've been looking at it is you can either try and reduce tourism by punishing property owners, or you could pay for affordable housing. But you can't do both. And so, you know, as the county works through this Minatoya issue, we want to put out a public challenge to the county council members that if they think that they could get rid of $30 million in revenue so easily, then my challenge to the Maui County Council is for the next 3 years, try putting $30 million towards affordable housing in the Affordable Housing Fund and see if maybe that makes a difference instead of just cutting that money out of the budget. Because when you cut that money out of the budget, that's a big percentage of the budget. Our budget is like $800 million. And so $30 million seems like it's a drop in the bucket, but wait until you start doing that spreadsheet and see what services you have to cut for your citizens, and your residents here. What departments get less funding? What vehicles don't get bought? What do we lose out on as residents because the county council made a promise to the Cost of Government Commission that they were going to follow this plan? It just doesn't make sense to cut your tax base when you're finally talking about paying for affordable housing for the first time in decades. So that's our challenge when it comes to the Minatoya thing. But also, it really is property rights. You can't tell people they can do one thing with their property and then suddenly pull the rug out from under them, especially when financing is contingent on their ability to do that thing. We don't want a financial crisis.
No, we wholeheartedly agree, and this is, for those listening, this is kind of an ongoing issue, and the key thing is that when we look at solutions, we have to look at them holistically, and we have to engage people from all sides who come with different opinions, but to look at not just one side of an issue and say this is our goal and this is what we're wanting to do without looking at the impacts. And so it's critically important that we bring voices together, and as legislation is moving forward very quickly, sometimes without broader input, we're running into significant challenges. Jason, I have loved having you on the show. We're going to have you back on again soon and give us regular updates. You're always wonderful to talk to and bring such great knowledge and information to the table.
Sounds great, Pam. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. For those who are just tuning in, this is Business Matters, brought to you by the Maui Chamber of Commerce. And next we're going to talk to Buzz Fernandez, the district manager of Matson Navigation. Buzz was born on Oahu and attended Punahou High School, in which he graduated in 1968. After college, Buzz worked in San Francisco in restaurant management and moved to Maui as a food and beverage manager for Ka'anapali Beach Hotel from 1972 to 1978. He also managed the Maui Meat Company from 1978 to 1980. In 1981, Buzz was hired by Matson Navigation and has been with them for the last 40 years. So we're going to have Buzz on. I understand that he's calling in as we're talking right now, but he has been with Matson for 40 years. And again, we all are so curious to hear about what's happening in shipping. We see national news updates about shipping delays and letting people know, where things are going, because we're hearing of price increases, we're hearing with dock shortages, we're hearing with barges backed up in harbors, and so everybody's very curious to know how things are moving forward. So we're really glad to have Buzz join us this morning, and I think he's coming online right now. Buzz, are you there?
Yes, I am. Is this Pam?
Yes. Good morning, Buzz. Great to hear your voice and talk to you.
Good morning. Long time no see.
Long time no see. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Everybody is so curious about what's going on in shipping, and of course we've all been hearing about staffing challenges and shipping delays nationwide. We're just wondering if you could share with us how those things are impacting Matson.
Sure. That's an important question, Pam, and of course everybody's interested in it. Well, as you know, your people know, is that both mainstream and industry media has been reporting that there's a shortage of raw materials that is causing some temporary delays in the availability of many consumer goods that move into the global supply chain. And this is due, I think, mainly to the unprecedented consumer demand for manufactured goods during the pandemic. Everybody wants stuff, and so that's at a high degree. The biggest impact, I think, or challenge has been for almost everyone, including us in the shipping business, has been the impact of labor, people. It seems like each wave of the pandemic has caused, a greater impact on the availability of people, across the entire chain to keep things moving into the economy and into the global chain. I think for Matson's part, we're lucky in that we've had no disruptions in service, and at this point in time, we really don't expect any. The Hawaii service to the islands has been basically uninterrupted. We've been on time, and we're mostly unaffected by the port congestion that everybody sees and hears about in the West Coast, especially down in Southern California. And this is mainly due, Pam, and because we have dedicated use harbors or areas, terminals on the West Coast. So when our ships go in, there's no waiting in line for us to unload or to unload our vessels. At the same time, remember that Matson follows all CDC guidelines to prevent the spread of the virus. That's important to us. We follow all protocols, strict protocols, at all our terminals and our facilities. And like everyone else, though, we have seen positive cases with the virus, Omicron, but not many overall. And again, with no scheduled impact to our vessels.
That is so amazing to hear. I'm fascinated to know that Matson, doesn't have to wait in line at the terminals. I mean, that is such a huge thing to have built over the years and to have created within your operations, so that when we have something like a global pandemic and others are scrambling with how to navigate within these circumstances, you folks have built in the security to ensure that your lines continue to operate and continue to operate on time with no delays.
Well, that's why I think everything moving to the islands has been somewhat smooth, so far. We can't predict the future, but we're in pretty good shape with those, exclusive use terminals for us to move our freight, for sure.
And it sounds like you folks have also done an awesome job. I mean, everybody is dealing with people out with Omicron or having exposure and being out, or being out because they need to take care of their children who are out from school and do homeschooling. So to be managing that as well is also a tremendous feat.
Well, yeah, that's, again, that's some of the solutions, right, Pam? Staying safe, common sense things by staying safe, following all protocols that the CDC has given out and companies have been given out. The simple things, wearing your mask and wearing it properly, washing your hands effectively and often, using proper distancing when you're around other people at this point in time. Matson, Pam, has not required its employees to get vaccinated, but we have strongly encouraged it from the very beginning when this virus started, which includes the booster shots also.
Right.
Matson's numbers, luckily, have really stayed low. Our Matson employees, or our employees both at the terminals and in our facilities, depend on each other. So we all can keep each other safe. Everyone needs, I think, to do their part so we can get through this pandemic. It's important. It's important.
It is, and I sure appreciate the leadership that you folks have shown, and because our community, as you already know, and always serve very well, so relies on Matson and your shipping abilities, and to have come through this so well is phenomenal. What do you foresee in the future for Matson and shipping and the shipping industry here in Hawaii?
Well, I think, Pam, I think consumer or people's demands will be the same. I think will be elevated, and I think that elevation or the need for consumer goods will take us through, I think, the rest of the year through 2022. But also realize that supply chain effects will also continue. So it's a day-to-day keeping on top of things, keeping things moving. It's difficult to predict really much further than that, and that's mainly because we know that the pandemic has been very, very unpredictable. So we have to be able to think on our feet quickly, get things done, get things moving, and just continue to do our part in getting the goods to the islands so people can have their consumer goods, for sure.
Well, thank you, Buzz, for joining us this morning. You and your team and Matson have always been amazing community partners. I know you've been involved with the Red Cross and always looking at how we sustain our community during difficult times, and being very proactive to ensure that when tough times fall, whether it's a natural or man-made disaster or, an unprecedented virus, you folks are there on the front lines, keeping things moving and ensuring that we have the services and goods that we need brought in. So we applaud all of your efforts and deeply appreciate you for the tremendous work that you're doing. Folks, that's all the time we have today. We're so glad to have had Buzz Fernandez join us. He is the district manager of Matson Navigation. Thrilled to have him be able to share that they are doing such an amazing and awesome job. And just want to let everybody know that we want to stay safe, continue to protect our community. This is Pamela Tumpop with the Maui Chamber of Commerce, thanking you for joining us for Business Matters. Aloha and a hui ho.